we go.
Do you live stream the course?
Yeah, there's that's what they asked me to do, so that's what I do.
Oh, wow.
And there's actually people who, I think more people see it later than see it now. It goes up, we have a group called the former, well, it was while we had, guys wanted the class to be taped, just recorded, so they could listen to it later, and etc. So we did that. And then there were guys who were former students who wanted that tape. Fine, so we did that. So now they get this, those guys. Whether they watch it or not, I don't know. Every now and then they send a response, so I guess they do. Okay, so we're on page 419. So the Rebbe told us as follows. We have 3 questions in the Maimon. Vayidaber Elokim es kol advar me'ela leimor. God said all these things to say. That word to say is not understood, and all of the Mefarshim ask about this. Rashi and Chumash asks about it. Because the word leimor generally means the most common pasuk in the Torah. How many times, Doc, do you remember? I said it. 69. Yeah, good job. I don't even know. I didn't count. I just heard that from someone who's good at that. Who's good at counting those sort of things. 69 times, evidently, in the Torah it says, Vayidaber Shem el Moshe leimor. Now, what does that mean? Often it's translated, God spoke to Moshe saying. That's a bad translation. What it means is God spoke to Moshe to say. Leimor means to say. It's an infinitive. To say to other people. Kadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe to tell other people what it is that he said. Now, obviously, by Matan Torah, that's not relevant because everybody was there. Future generations, we were also there, right? So the question on the word leimor is a very, very powerful question. Again, all of them Mefarshim ask it. Rashi answers it on Chumash. Right? There's a Dibur Maskal on Rashi. So that was the first question. The second question, why does it say Anochi Avai Elokecho? Why not just say Anochi? I am the one that took you out of Mitzrayim. Why say Anochi Avai Elokecho? I'm God, your Lord, that took you out of Mitzrayim. Okay, we'll see the answer to that very, very clearly. And also, the third question the Rebbe asks is, why does it say Mi'eretz Mitzrayim mi'beis avadim? Right? From Eretz Mitzrayim, a house of bondage. Why not just say from a house of bondage? I took you out of slavery, because the ikar is that we are exchanging one sense of shi'abud, of bondage, to another, for another. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is now the one whose voice we must listen to. So why say it's Eretz Mitzrayim? And if it was Slovakia, would there be any difference? Okay, those are the 3 questions. In order to answer those 3 questions, the Rebbe has told us so far that the whole world we know, the Torah, the world and you and I mirror Torah. And the Rebbe brought the Midrashim to teach us that, etc., etc. That's not our inyan now, right? So how can we learn about ourselves and learn about Torah? Well, look at the world. What do we know about the world? 4 different levels. Daimim, Sameach, Chai, Medaber. Mineral life, animal, vegetable life, animal life, and Medaber, the one who speaks. Now, the Chiddush in the Maimon, not a complete Chiddush because it's brought in other places to this, but it is still something that usually isn't said, is that what? Daimim, so Daimim is mineral life, it has no chayas, has no vitality. Tzemeach, so Tzemeach has a certain level of vitality, it grows, it changes, but it doesn't have true vitality. Right? True vitality is animals. Animals move. Animals have hergish. They have feelings. And what was really interesting, and this was the Chiddush, the Rabbi also said, an animal, chai, also has seichel, has intellect. Not the intellect to do mathematics, not the intellect to learn Chassidus, not the intellect to figure out how to make a car. Okay, that's true, but they definitely have intellect. They definitely think about certain things and figure things out. Right? So they might be able to figure out how to get into the chicken coop. They might figure out how to, very, very sophisticated hunting methods of all sorts of animals. Right? We were talking about Lake, we were talking about the dolphins that swimming around in a circle and they find a big school of fish and they swim in a circle and they make the circle smaller and smaller and smaller until those fish are all basically like in a net, and then the dolphins take turns swimming through these fish, and they just open their mouth and just hundreds of fish go in. Okay, pretty impressive. Fine.
Mr. Eck
count.
Yeah, Mr. Ed could count. Mr. Ed could talk and count. He was a little different. He was in a higher level. So there's a level of seichel in Chai, which was a chiddush. Because generally we say what's Medaber. Medaber is humankind, and what's unique about us, intellect. Well, yes, because our intellect is definitely different than an animal's intellect, but animals also have intellect. Right? So what was unique about the level of Medaber, the Rebbe says, which is really a chiddush and is going to help us understand the whole Maimon, is the level to go beyond seichel, beyond intellect. Okay, fine. So that's Daimim Sameach Chaim Medaber in the world, in people. So the Rebbe told us Daimim is oisius, those letters that we use to think and speak, right? But they're oisius, they're Daimim, they don't change, they just are what they are.
What is oisius? Sorry?
Letters.
Okay.
Letters.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so letters are like the building blocks of, okay? Sameach is our midas, our emotional attributes. Chai is our seichel, intellect, which gives the lebedekait, the Rebbe said, was also very, very interesting, right? Another chiddush in the Maimer, right? That midas lack a certain life and vitality to the extent that they don't move. They grow, but they grow very, very slowly, and they grow, so to speak, in the same place. And then we're going to read over that again. We did it last time. We're going to read through quickly the first paragraph on page 419, which is all this in a Veda, so we can understand what happens at the bottom of 419. There's Chai, which is Seichel, and Medaber, go beyond Seichel, which is Etzem Nefesh. Okay, those are the four levels in us. And the Rebbe said the highest level is revealed in the lowest level. We still have to figure that out. Okay. V'hine, let's just read this. We'll read it quickly because we did do it on Thursday. We did it on Thursday, but I do want to see it quickly so we'll understand, rather than review it outside, I want to review it inside, because we have to understand the next paragraph. We have to understand this to understand the next paragraph, which is the fourth level. This is the first three levels in Avodah, in our Avodah. What's the Avodah of Daimim? Mineral life, quiet, calm, but negative way generally. Sameach obviously grows a little bit, but doesn't move around. Chai, and what we'll see today, start Amnam, which is Medaber. Hine, Kamechinu ba'Avodah. Sheyeshnam gam kein kol hasugim hanal. There are these four different levels in our Avodas Hashem, in our service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hine. Sug ha-Daimim ba'Avodah. What is Daimim? That Avodah which doesn't move, doesn't change, just is what it is. Hu kiyam ha-mitzvahs is the performance of mitzvahs, b'derech mitzvahs anashim milumada. In the way of mitzvahs anashim milumada, which means in English doing things by rote. I do this because this is what I do. My father told me to do it. I do it. I don't think a lot about it, and I don't change very much. My shacharis today is exactly the same as my shacharis yesterday, but I do it. I mean, this is the interesting enough. The Rebbe puts this in as a level of Avodah. This is one of the four levels of Avodah. There are Maimarim that talk about this as non-Avodah. There's no Avodah yet. Nothing's happened. There's no service yet. No work. No. Here the Rebbe says there's no level of Avodah, but obviously the most mundane and lowest level. Right? The mitzvahs anashim milumada, when a person does mitzvahs by rote, in a loyrak, not only she'ein b'zeh chayes, not only is there not vitality, ki ein b'zeh gam tzmich mikatnus lagadlos. There's also not even growth, which is sameach, right? Mikatnus lagadlos, from a small state to a larger state. Timiacha she'ein ze mitzad hergish. Since this is not coming from any feeling whatsoever, ki'im, but rather mitzad, it's coming from the place of what? Mitzvahs anoshim milumado, the mitzvahs that are done by rote, meaning the reason the person is doing this is your average person who does mitzvahs by rote. Why is he doing it? Well, this is what his father told him to do. He went to school, they told him to do it, and this is what he does. The Baal Tshuva, so cold. Right, so that creature, which the Rebbe refers to as the late beginner. So the late beginner it's okay. Obviously, at the beginning, he's not doing it by rote. It's not rote. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing. So he figures out how to do all this. But after a while, he might do it just because this is what I do. Baruch Hashem, I become accustomed to do this, and this is what I do. Does he think about it? No, not so much. But a day wouldn't go by without tefillin, chos v'sholem. But he doesn't think about putting on tefillin so much that at the beginning when he put on tefillin, he was, it took him forever. He was thinking about it. He was wrapped up in the straps. He almost strangled himself, right? After a while, so he knows how to do it, and he throws them up in the air and puts in his arm and puts in his head, and he's there he goes. He's already halfway through Shacharis by the time that's happened. Okay, can that happen? It can happen, right? Interesting enough, the Rabbi still calls it a Vayidaber, but there's no chayus. There's no change, right? Hare lo yesh bezeh. There is not. Lo yesh. It's common it's English, right? There is not. We don't have a word for it. One word for there is not. We just add not after there is. But generally in Lashon HaKodesh and in English and in Hebrew, so we say ain't. But sometimes the Chassidus say lo yesh. Not there is. In other words, there is not. Hare lo yesh bezeh. There isn't in this an inyan. This is Yiddish now. Was is kfetched in was mitzad dem zal steigen b'avodas. It bothers him. He kfetches about it. Now usually a kfetch is a complaint, but in this case he's not complaining to anybody else. He's complaining to himself. It's bothering him. It's bothering him that he's not steigen. Steigen meaning moving, growing. He's not growing, but it doesn't bother him. Why not? Because there's not really very much feeling involved in it anyway. This is just what he does, and he gets up and he went to Shacharis, and in no way, shape, or form after he finishes Shacharis does he think, that my Shacharis wasn't better than yesterday's, and that's a problem. That's the last thought from in his mind. Don't think about that at all. He's finished Shacharis, Baruch Hashem, he did it, he's done, and away he goes. Next stop will be Mincha. L'mayla mizeh, he might actually sit and learn also, fine, but L'mayla mizeh, there's a higher level than this. Sudat samer, which is like vegetable life in a Veda. Shukima mitzvahs, this is the performance of mitzvahs. And we're going to have to understand this, the difference between what the Rebbe says now, ahava v'yira tivim, love and fear that is natural, right? And that's where this is coming from. But in the meantime, we'll just translate it simply. Natural love, the natural love of the Nefesh Elokis. The natural love that a Jew has for Kadosh Baruch Hu, so that's being expressed in this person's behavior to a certain degree. And therefore he has a certain feeling for Kadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore there's going to be a certain growth. Natural love and fear. That there is a certain growth, that since there is a certain feeling, Hine a hergish, as a result of this feeling, kvetched him, it does bother him. Shemitzad zezal steigen. It bothers him if he stays the same. He wants to have a slightly deeper appreciation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and a deeper expression of his love and fear. It's love and fear that are tivim, and we'll see what the disadvantage of that is. But it's still Baruch Hashem. There's some growth. So he's like a plant. He's growing up slowly, gradually. We'll come back to Tzemeach once we see Chai. L'mayla mizeh hu suga Chai. Person who's alive, like an animal. Not an animal in a bad way, in a good way. He's alive. Moves around. What's that? Where's that coming from in a Veda? Shu'ava v'yira sichli. This is the intellectual love and fear, meaning love and fear that comes as a result of his benenus, of contemplating the greatness of God and bringing about an emotional change as a result of that intellectual appreciation. Ava v'yira sichli, intellectual love and fear. It's not that the love and fear stays in the intellect. The love and fear comes from the intellect, from a greater appreciation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so his love grows. And this means it moves, and we'll see what movement means. Very interesting what the Rebbe says. The difference between the animal and the plant. The plant grows. First of all, the plant grows, but very gradually. And the plant doesn't move. So on this level, the Chai will move. So what's all that in a Veda? Either a person's emotions are dominant, isgabrus. Lihit gaber means to overcome something. Gvura, strength, chesed, gvura. Right? So either the midas are dominant, in which case that's soimeach, or shahasechel, who bisgabrus, or the intellect is bisgabrus, that's chai. Shehu suga chai. Why? Now, the Rebbe said this, we had to think about this on Thursday. We're not going to think about it as much today because we did that thinking on Thursday. How much can we think? Okay, there's something will happen to us. But I mean, we did already talk about it. We can just remind ourselves of it today. But that's why we're going through all this, because we can't understand the next level if we don't understand this well and remember this well. All right? So the Rebbe now says something very, very interesting about seichel. Right? Shehu sugachai mipnei why shaseichel nimtim durch in ganzen. For whatever reason, there's a lot of Yiddish in this language, relative. He's taken completely. Seichel penetrates into the depths of the person and takes over their whole persona. They are very much what they think. You'll say, oh, they are what they feel. Well, but a feeling, simply a midah, is that I have a certain connection to something, but I'm not necessarily going to define myself in terms of that connection. Whereas seichel, I'll define myself in terms of a particular idea. Now, I can define myself on the lowest level of human expression. I can define myself in terms of certain connections to things. But even if I do that, I will have to figure out intellectually why that's a reasonable thing to do. And I'll tell you it's important that I'm doing it for reason A, B, and C. Right? So that even though now there are people who define themselves by certain taivas that they have, so they define themselves in terms of those taivas, those desires, which is a very, very strange way to define yourself. Okay, it's very low, very unimpressive. Okay, say it. But they define themselves in terms of those taivas, but they will explain to you intellectually why it's important, probably because they're a victim, and they, usually victimhood is the reason for all of this. Victimhood explains everything, right? All disgusting behavior can be explained through victimhood, right? So that's usually what they'll say, is they'll explain that they're, a victim, and therefore they have to, sort of overcome that by virtue of this very loud connection to this particular aspect of their life, which shouldn't define them in any way. Every taiva, so everybody has taiva, it's fine, but I don't walk around the street carrying placards. How proud I am of my taivas, I usually keep them to myself. Right? So, once I remember we were talking about the adulterers' pride parades. Would there ever be such a thing? A bunch of adulterers would be so proud of their particular taiva that they're adulterers, so they'll make a parade and they'll make signs and they'll go up and down the streets and proud to be an adulterer. It's a bizarre thing to do, and no one would do it. Why? Well, because they don't necessarily define themselves by that particular emotional connection to something. It's something they do. They might not even be proud of it. They might, yes, be proud of it. Depends who they're talking to. Right? In the locker room, they're probably proud of it. Somewhere else where they have to be more normal, so they're not. Okay, that being said, it's not how they define themselves. Right? Whereas certain thoughts they have about things and where they hold on more important ideas about what life is about and what's important, whether it's about financial reality, economic reality, political reality, spiritual reality, whatever the reality is, that's definitely going to define them more. And that's seichel. Seichel penetrates into every aspect of the being. Okay. And if he has enough seichel, he might even stop being an adulterer. Imagine that. Because it'll affect him. Right? Yeah. Now, adultery we all have a big problem with, okay? Most of us are adulterous in our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We have other lovers that aren't you. Okay, it's adulterous. years old. That's why that mushal is brought in Chazal all the time. I didn't make it up because I'm grub. That's the mushal that Chazal use all the time. When you say it, it's Shetem Zayin Machareya. You say it in Kriyashma. Right? That's the mushal all the time. Right? Okay. So, why might I not be Seichel? Because Seichel will penetrate into my being much more fully than Midos, and so it can therefore control the Midos also, which is interesting. Midos being emotional attributes. Okay. So, like we see, a hefresh bein semech v'chai, the difference between vegetable life and animal life. That semeach, hine avshut semeach mikatnus legadlus, even though he does grow from a small state to a larger state. Mikol makom, nevertheless, hine tzmicha this growth, he b'mekem yedavka, it's in the same place. Now we're going to see what that means in Avodah. Because in Avodah, what was that? That's ava v'yira tivim, natural love. The person will grow. But the growth will be somehow limited. We'll see how. Mashenkin chai, an animal, walks around, changes his place. Interesting enough, in Semeach, I don't know how you fit it into the mushal inside, but it is interesting. If you disconnect the Semeach from its place, it stops growing, as a matter of fact. Right? Which is really interesting. Right? So too in Aveda. These two levels. The Ava Vayirativim, the natural love of the Nefesh Elokis, and if I somehow allow that to express itself in my behavior, in my life, I can tap into that natural love that my soul has for Kadosh Baruch Hu. Shehu Sugat Semeach, Hine Av Sheyesh Ben Tzmicha Mikatnus Legados. The person's going to grow. Because Baruch Hashem, they have some feeling in their relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and it'll bother them if they don't grow and change to a certain degree. Mikol Makam, nevertheless, a Kol B'Mkemei, it's all in its place. What does that mean? The Rebbe says an amazing thing. D'mi'ava lo yira, from love there won't be fear. U'miyira lo yav, from fear there won't be love. What's the person's natural disposition? Be a very disciplined, gevura-like person, so that's how they'll relate to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Or they're a very loving, warm sort of person, so that's how they'll relate to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. If a different relationship is called for, will they be able to find that? No, because they're expressing their own natural inclination to be a certain way. Now, they're expressing that in a beautiful way because they're expressing it in terms of their relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. But they're still stuck. They're not moving. They're like a plant. They're growing, but in the same place. And they can't move to a different place. And we'll see what's seichel. Let's see the difference in seichel. Kamechin atzmicha mikatnus lagadnus. So too, this person's growth, who besug shebe'er kadaf, is simply in that. Sug is a type that's commensurate to him. In other words, again, like we just said, if this person is a more gevuradik person, a very disciplined person, okay. So then his relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu will be expressed through tremendous discipline. If he's more of a sort of a, get a lot of things done in a somewhat haphazard way sort of person, well, that'll be who he is. It's actually interesting because there were two people who ran Tzach, Tzuri Gudas Chabad, here in Eretz Yisrael, way back. One was Slogum, Zeluk Slogum, and the other was, I forget his name. Anyway, so they were the head of Tzach. Tzach does all the kids programs, Lag B'Omer parades, right? A lot of education. Chabad houses are all under the auspices of Tzach. So one was the head and one was his sgan. One was very, very organized, would never do any pu'ula unless he had already raised the money for it. He wouldn't do anything. He'd first raise the money, and it's okay, now we have the money, we can go do such and such. The other was, we have to do such and such, let's do it, and we'll find the money. That would be the example of the two of them. Completely different. One was extremely organized, and one was what we call Urs the Tayyip, lights of chaos. Right? And these two work together. Okay? And they always, they got along, but they would, kvetch with each other about how to do it. Reasonable argument. They went to the Rebbe together. And they went into Yechidus separately, the private audience with the Rebbe separately. So I think Zelig Slonim was the one who was, very merubah, very straight. So the Rebbe told him, in Yechidus, you have to get out of your you're too straight, you're too gvurdik, you have to get out of that and be able to do things more, what's the word, impulsive, not impulsive, a better word, but I also use the word impulsive. If they, just spontaneous, fine. So the Rebbe told him. Then, Zelig Slonim, and I apologize, I don't remember who the second Rav was. So he went into the Rebbe for Yechidus, and the Rebbe told him, you have to be much more organized. You have to be unorganized. You have to be organized. More gvura. Sameach can't do that. Sameach is, this is who I am, and this is what I do. Right? Okay. So there might be a bacher who's better at Mitzvayim than learning. There's another bacher who's better at learning than Mitzvayim. Say this. So the bacher is better at learning, should go out of Mitzvayim. That doesn't mean he shouldn't learn. It only goes out of Mitzvayim when it's not Seder and Yeshiva, when he should go out of Mitzvayim. The bacher who's very good at Mitzvayim should make sure he sits down and learns. Okay. So that's not Tzameach. Tzameach has a hard time doing that. Can't move. Expresses himself within the context of what he sees as his natural inclinations. Since this is all a function of his nature, and there's no higher thing that's somehow propelling him and revealed in him. So then they remain in their natural state. That's tzomeach in avodah. The person's growing. But it's all within the context of who he is and how he sees himself and the limitations that he's imposed upon himself by virtue of his understanding of his natural inclinations. Mashen came ba'ava v'yira sichlim. If the Av and Yira comes as a result of his beinunus, of contemplation and meditation, shu sugachai, and this is the one who's alive, since this is not in terms of his nature, it's in terms of his intellectual understanding of what's proper. Oh, so then what? The Mela, consequently, yishtanu amidos. His midos will change. His emotional attributes will change. Kefi seichel manhigam, in accordance with the intellect that's guiding them. Oh, then what might be the case? That he was thinking very deeply about, and again, bottom line, what's the difference between seichel and midos, between intellect and emotions? Intellect is objective reality, good, proper intellect, and emotions are subjective reality. So subjective reality is, this is who I am. Objective reality is, this is what should be. Oh, so I'll be seichel, I can bring about a change in myself, because even though I might be naturally inclined to act a certain way, I might come to the intellectual understanding that right now something else is called for, and then I'll demand that of myself. That's the chai. He can move from one place to another. He can move to a place that might not necessarily be his natural expression. Okay. So it might be that even though he's naturally inclined to a more chesidic reality, he might realize that right now what's called for is gvura, or the other way around. Ava, yira. Sheni mitzad tevaki mitzad seichel. V'meili yishtanu. 4 lines up. Hamidas kefi seichel amanigam. 3 lines up. The yeshis beinunus miyuchedus. There is specific contemplation and meditation la'ava that will arouse love. And there's certain meditation and contemplation on God's greatness, which will arouse hamiyuchedus. It's specific to yira, fear. Right? There's no question that certain things I think about might arouse in me a certain awe of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Certain things I think about might arouse in me a certain love for a Kadosh Baruch Hu. I'll be overcome by his love for me, and therefore I'll desire and experience. I'll be overcome by his absolute awesome power, and that will arouse in me a certain awe and fear Fear meaning that I realize that my behavior has to be absolutely in line with what he wants. I might even fear a punishment, which is the lowest level. Hine kefi oifen is beinunus. In terms of the oifen means fashion, the way of these beinunus, this contemplation, kain yeh midah. So too the midah will follow. The emotional attribute will follow. That's why it's chai, moves around. A person can express himself in different ways. Of course he's growing. Animals grow. Grows like a plant. But animals can also jump. I was going to talk about that later. Right? A plant can't jump. A plant grows. You don't all of a sudden come back and the plant grew a foot overnight. It doesn't do it. What can an animal do? It can be in a completely different place the next day. Completely different place. You left him over there. He's over there. Right? How did he get there? He jumped there. He didn't even walk there calmly. It took him 4 days. No. He got there, he jumped. In a Vayidaber, through seichel, a person can jump from one place to another. Once he comes to a serious appreciation of the grandeur of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, so he can make very serious changes in himself. It might not take so long. Certain things should be done. Obviously, there's an advantage of things be done gradually and in a healthy way, 100%. But there's also other things that, relative to keeping Shabbos, most people at some point just decide, I'm going to keep Shabbos. They don't say, well, I'll keep one malacha, then I'll keep another malacha. And sooner or later, they're not doing 39 malachas. It's not how most people do it, right? Now, there might be certain ways in which a person will say, well, I'm going to stop driving my car on Shabbos. That's the first thing they do. Okay, that can happen. But most people just make the decision at a certain point to say, I'm now keeping Shabbos. And they will define themselves as a Shomer Shabbos now. I'm a Shomer Shabbos. That's who I am. Are they going to make mistakes? Of course they're going to make mistakes. They don't know all of the halachas yet. But what they know, they do. Most people start Shabbos that way. Right? Davening is usually actually more gradual. Someone will daven mincha. Sometimes Shacharis isn't the first thing they start davening because it's long. But if they daven Shachar, okay, so they put on tefillin and they say Kriya Shema and daven Shemona Esrei every morning. Okay, fine, good. And that lasts for a while until slowly but surely they'll add a little more here, a little more there. That's reasonable. Certain things that just happen quickly. Kashrus, usually pretty abrupt. At a certain point, the person just says, well, I'm just not going to eat non-kosher food. Sometimes it's gradual. I won't eat shellfish. There are people who do that. Right? They'll eat treifas. But interesting enough, if it's avativis, so then the growth is going to be gradual, and I might say I won't eat shellfish, and now I won't. The person won't eat pork, and they won't. Okay, fine. If it's seichel, if it's a function of his beinunus, and they've really contemplated reality, what conclusion will they come to? Non-kosher food's bad for me, and there's no difference between shellfish, pork, and anything else. So they'll just stop. Oh, that's seichel. Seichel will allow me to make that jump. Now, as someone guiding someone through that process, there's certain things you'll tell them not to jump into, and there's certain things you can tell them, you can jump into that. You can't jump into that, don't jump into that. You'll blow a fuse if you jump into that. Okay, so there's certain things that are going to be more gradual, certain things that can be rather abrupt. But the desire for the abrupt comes from the seichel, not the meanings. All of a sudden, this is true. I want it all. That's a very reasonable thing to say. It might not be reasonable to bring that into action. Right? It might be that in terms of what I'm actually doing, I'm going to have to do this more gradually. Okay.
How was that jump from seichel versus just hergesh? I'm feeling revelation. I'm feeling giluim, and I want to jump. And
That's seichel. Gilui is seichel. I now came to a very, very powerful realization of some idea and truth. That's seichel. The revelation happens in my seichel. It might penetrate down into my midas, or it might not, but it happens in my seichel. Okay? I'm now aware of the truth. Oh, so now I want to jump. 100%. That's perfectly. It's funny because you think midas are the impulsive one, and the seichel is the calm, cool, and collected one. So there's an aspect of that. There's no question. But in terms of bringing about change in people, Seichel brings about more serious change. So Avavi, this is what the Rebbe is talking about in terms of Avavi or Tivim. When the person becomes aware of it's going to be subtle because it's Avani or Tivim and they haven't really thought about it and they haven't nurtured it, right? They become aware of a basic love they feel for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they want to connect to Him. So that's going to be somewhat gradual. Whereas if they come to if they have some sort of epiphany intellectually, there could be some very serious overnight change, because that's the nature of sin. That's why seichel works. All of a sudden I become aware of the truth. Eureka, so to speak. Hine kvi even is beinus kenya hamida. Ukamei hine hagdolas v'aliyas hamida. So too, the growth of the midas. After aliyah shalei lefi erkam klal, they won't be commensurate to what they were before. Mitzad seichel amanigim, based on the seichel that's guiding them. That the midas will grow naturally. Now, this doesn't happen in people. I mean, sometimes happens, but it happens in adults. Naturally, how do we grow? Well, emotionally. Well, our emotions become more and more sophisticated in the slow, steady maturing that is based on developing a more sophisticated intellectual understanding of reality. Okay. That's generally how it works, right? Okay, so a 10-year-old won't be as mature as a 15-year-old. So a 15-year-old has a slightly more mature and sophisticated understanding of reality. Calling a 15-year-old sophisticated is pretty wild, but relative to the 10-year-old, he is. Right? Now, the 20-year-old should have, and now he might not, he might be an American college student, but he should have, he should have...
no offense taken.
What?
No offense taken.
He should have a more sophisticated understanding of reality in seichel. What's the difference between an adult and a child? Seichel. Therefore, their midas are different. Why are there midas? Why does the child throw himself on the ground when he doesn't get what he wants? Because he's a kid. He doesn't understand anything, right? Why does an adult glue his hands to the runway? Because he's a kid. Because he's an idiot, right? He's not a normal human being. He's not a healthy, well-developed human being.
This was on
He's
Shabbos.
throwing a tantrum.
On Shabbos, there was a small child who was pushing a stroller on the dining room table, and the stroller got stuck behind a chair, and she started crying. And the solution was just to move the chair, and as soon as the chair was moved, stop crying.
Right, children have a hard time with that. That's why they need parents around. Mm-hmm. And one of the most important intellectual aspects of that growth is the appreciation, and this is where, obviously, that 20-year-old's gluing his hands to the runway is more intellectually developed than the child. But he's still just throwing a temper tantrum. Why? Well, because his intellect should allow him to appreciate the fact that there's something more important than him. True maturity is coming to a point where I'm less and less focused on self and more focused on the other, whether it's other people, if it's the Eibishter, so it's the Eibishter, it's Kadosh Baruch Hu. If it's all, I mean, obviously it has to involve a Kadosh Baruch Hu ultimately, but if it doesn't involve a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Rahman al-Islam, so still there are mature people out there. What do they care about? Other people. They're sensitive to the needs of other people, not just sensitive to their own particular hang-ups. So this kid will say, well, I'm not throwing a temper tantrum over the fact that I don't get ice cream. I'm throwing a temper tantrum over the climate change because that's so important. Okay, we're still just throwing a temper tantrum. Right? So grow up. I don't understand why they take them off the runway. I mean, no, just leave them there.
That was my thought about the people who block traffic.
Yeah.
Just leave them there.
What?
They're not allowed to be there legally, and the cars can't be there legally. So.
Just leave them there. There was a great, I saw someone sent me a clip. There's a great clip of an American guy. Only Americans would think of this. Europeans would not think of this. Someone was blocking traffic, so the American guy said, okay, I hear you. I think it's really important what you're doing. I'm going to put my car here also. He turns his car around and points the exhaust at the person and starts blasting exhaust at them. They moved in about 30 seconds. Just probably one of those American, greaser trucks. Who knows what was coming out? It wasn't electric. Who knows what was coming out? It was one of Joe Biden's cars, a Corvette. Who knows what was coming out of that thing, right? So they all moved. Then the traffic said that. A little bit of seichel, right? It's so good. And you see them, they're like, oh my God. So great. Okay, so that's what we did on Thursday. Most of it. We didn't finish the whole thing on Thursday. We just finished it now. 3 different levels in Avodah so far. I haven't seen the 4th. 3 different levels in Avodah. Daimim, Sameach Chai, Daimim, doing mitzvahs by rote. Chai, natural love and fear, which means that I'm limited, but Baruch Hashem growing. Seichel, allowing myself to come to an objective intellectual understanding of something, such that I could move from one place to another, because it might be that right now what's called for is Ava, even though I generally am more Yira-oriented, or vice versa. That's what we saw. Now, however, all 3 of these levels are limited. Gimel Sugim Eila Einam Tachlis Aveda, not the ultimate Aveda. The Loimi Boy, it's not necessary to say, meaning it's obvious, language from the Gemara, Shaveda b'derech mitzvahs anashim melumada, the level of Aveda that is doing by rote, ain't a tachlis Aveda. Obviously that's not the Aveda the Eibishter wants. The Eibishter wants us. Shar eina oived klal im hanefesh. He's not serving at all with his soul itself. Ki'im, but rather im levushe hanefesh, the garments of the soul. Tanya, 3rd chapter, 4th chapter, 5th chapter, right? Garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action. His thought, speech, and action is doing what a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants, which is extremely important. You can't get anywhere if that's not happening. But there's no soul behind it, so to speak, right? He's just doing it by rote, and it's very external and unfeeling. But his thought, speech, and action are proper. So that's pretty good. But there's no soul there. There's no life there. More Yiddish. I don't know why. There's a lot of Yiddish in this line. I don't know why. Vayidaber tut ve'atim eisgestellt. That what he's doing is just expressing the levushe hanefesh, not the soul itself. Okay, so that's obvious. That's obviously a level of limitation. And no one in their right mind would say this is what a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants, a priori. And if they say Kriya Shema and just pay any attention to the words, and they say Kriya Shema because they do everything they're supposed to do, they would notice that a Kadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, the Eibishter wants your heart too. He wants your nefesh. What ma'od is, we'll see. That's where we're going now, this level, the 4th level. Even the level of Aveda that comes from natural love, this also isn't the ultimate purpose of Aveda. Why? It's in line with his nature. So therefore it's limited. Even though he is a person who can make choices in life, and therefore, as a result of this, you should get reward for choosing the right thing, and he does. He could choose he could choose something that's contrary to his nature.
Is Baal Bechir and Bechir Chavshi, should we understand them as the same idea?
Baal Bechir is the person who has choice. Bechir Chavshi is the choice he has.
Okay.
Right, so this person can make choices in his life. And since he can make choices that are not in line with this natural love of his soul, so then he actually is rewarded for making a proper choice. So that's good. That's laudable. And he's choosing his godly teva as opposed to the teva of his nefesh bahamis. Va'od Yosef, furthermore, shebetivai, right, that naturally, in terms of his nefesh b'amis, who oyev es gufa Yosef, he loves his body more. Right? I mean, his nefesh b'amis is more dominant than his nefesh elokis, right? Therefore, his love for his body is quite serious, right? Unir darf ois nutzen es ateva shel avir tivim, and therefore he has to, like, this is like to posit, right? To put in the battle. The teva, the nature of his ava v'yira tivim is natural love for God, neged against teva avas aguf. The teva that he has to love his body, just to posit those one against the other, and he's choosing the ava of the ava tivis of the nefesh elokis. So kol Chabad, well done, mamash well done. Mikol makom, nevertheless, harizeh kefi tivei, still in terms of his nature, because there is a natural love. Va'ava v'yira tivim, and this natural love that he has for Kadosh Baruch Hu, af shehem tzemchim, even though they can grow, and it does grow, mikatnus legadlus, the love and fear. That's why it's plural. Mikol mokem hem tamid b'hagbalis, say him, they're always in their limited state, meaning av is ava, yira is yira, never the twain shall meet. He's not going to move from one to the other, because he's simply expressing his natural tendencies, now into natural spiritual tendencies, the nature of his nefesh elokis. That's what I was talking about. He's not talking about his natural physical tendencies. Now, his natural physical tendencies will be an expression of his natural spiritual tendencies. Okay, but say they'll be a little more revealed because of the nature of the way we are down here in Elam Hazeh. Obviously, physicality is more obvious to us than godliness. Okay, but this is a person who has, Baruch Hashem, broken through the concealment and touched a certain place where he's acting in accordance with a very, very positive, healthy, and holy nature that he has, which is the nature of his nefesh elokis, to love the Eibishter. That's why the first time he put on tefillin, he started to cry. Right? Why? Why is he crying? First time he ate a hamburger, he cried. Well, he just went, wow, this is really good. Right? First time he put on tefillin, it touched the place in him that he never touched, so he started to connect to that place and act in a way that's consistent with that place. That's beautiful. It's amazing. But still, it's still an expression of him. Meaning, not that what he's doing is bad, and not that he's a horrible guy and he should be thrown off a roof, but it's limited. It's limited. What's it limited by? There is one who loves, meaning the love is an expression of him. And there is one who fears. The fear is an expression of him. Furthermore, not only those two levels are limited. Now the Rebbe is going to talk about even the level of Av and Yer Sichlim is limited. We'll see the limitation of it, and then tomorrow we'll see the next step. Gam Av and Yer Sichlim. Gam ze ain't tachli sa'aved. It's not ultimate purpose of Aveda, because we know there's a fourth level. It's called Adam. The Av shehu mishtane bezel gamre, even though he can bring about tremendous change in himself. In the language of the Rebbe, mishtane, he changes bezeh and this legam completely. Shaloi lefi tiva. He goes beyond his nature, the nature of his nefesh elokis. Ki'im kefi aseichel. He's acting in accordance with some objective understanding of what's true, and that objective understanding is coming from his appreciation of what's written in the Torah. It's not that he's making it up. This is a serious guy. Mikol makam harizeh kasher b'medida v'agbola. This is still connected to the medida, the measure of agbola and limitation, the seichel of seichel itself, because seichel is limited. Even though I'm understanding the Torah is not limited, but my ability to understand what the Torah wants of me is limited. Although I'm doing everything I understand, and I'm doing it in as selfless a way I can, as I can, because I'm interested in the objective truth, not my subjective desires, even my subjective spiritual desires. He doesn't go out from himself completely. Now the Rebbe says something very interesting. You don't see so often. There's the person who understands. Relative to love and fear, we said there's the person who loves. That you see a lot in Chassidus. That when Chassidus is talking about levels beyond love and fear, so it always talks about the limitation of love being an expression of Yesh Misha Ohev. There is the one who loves. I love you. So there's still an I that loves you. Now, I love you, that's better than I don't love you. Okay, we said it, but there's still an I that loves you. So here the Rebbe is saying it in a way that isn't usually said. I mean, that doesn't mean the idea isn't true. It's just an interesting way of expressing it. Yesh Misha Masig. There is the one who understands. I understand reality this way. Therefore, it's dependent on my understanding. So what's going to be beyond that? Well, we'll see that tomorrow. And this isn't the ultimate purpose of Aveda. Is this an incredible level to reach? This is quite impressive. This is very, very impressive. And a person who reaches this level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a very, very serious yid. Very serious person.
When we said before about how seichel, there's Vayidaber, that person's seichel can go beyond.
Vayidaber is going to be beyond seichel, the next level. Right now the Rebbe is talking about seichel, the limitation of seichel.
He's going to talk about getting beyond seichel. He's going to talk about to what level.
Yeah, that's Medaber. Yeah, we'll see what that means. We haven't seen. Right now, the Rebbe is talking about the limitation of the three levels of Daimim Chai and Daimim Sameach and Chai. The level of Daimim, obviously, doing things by rote. The level of Chai, limitation in the emotional expression by virtue of the fact that it's me, it's my natural state. Even the limitation of Seichel, which is where the Rebbe is now. Even though Seichel can take me to a place where I'll go beyond what's naturally, the way I will naturally express myself spiritually. Because I understand that there's another way that has to be done now, right? So it might be that I've come to the conclusion, I saw it in a mimer, someone talked about it, I had Yechidus with the Rebbe, whatever it is. Someone explained to me very, very clearly that right now something's necessary that goes beyond what I see as my natural limitations. I'm going to go beyond those, and I'm going to act in a way that is much closer to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu desires from me, and it's going to be an expression of my intellectual understanding that this is the proper behavior, even though this behavior goes beyond my natural spiritual reality. That's Ava V'Yira Sichli, but even that's limited. Why? It's limited by my intellectual understanding of what it is that I should do. I'm just trying to find a period which I can't. Okay, so I'm going to read one more line and we'll stop. This isn't our ultimate purpose. As amazing as this is, don't think that this is nothing. We don't know very many people who have reached this level. That being said, there's more to go. Sharim Malachim, even angels. Sheish lam avav yir sichli. An angel's avav and yir is based on their intellectual appreciation of Elokus. They see Elokus. They experience revelation of Elokus. And here you see, Josh, that's intellect. Yeah. The fact that the angels see it, where does it resonate in their intellect? They appreciate the greatness of what it is that they're experiencing right now. Nikraim b'shem internet, they're still called behemoths v'chayos. Chayos sekedish. They're still the level of chay. They're not the level of Adam. An angel is not on the level of Adam, even though they have an incredibly sophisticated appreciation of Elokus. Halavaya had that level. There's this level beyond angels called Adam. The Avavir Tivim ain't a gamba madregas behemoths v'chayos. Right? Ava v'yirativa, the natural level, going back to the natural level. That isn't on the level of these angels. Ki'im b'bechinas sameach, that's the vegetable level. Ava v'yir sichlim, And the intellectual love, it's alive, but still, the Ein Zeh Tachlis Avedus Adam. It's still not ultimately our Aved. He says a little further down, so we'll see it tomorrow. So I just want to try to get to the place where the Rabbi actually says it, but okay, we'll see it tomorrow. Fine, we'll stop there. And then we're going to get to the fourth level, Adam. What is that? How is that different than this incredible level and very impressive level called Ava V'Yira Sichlus? The person contemplates this is what Tanya talks about, right? The person contemplates the Eibishter and comes to a very serious love and awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu by virtue of the sophisticated understanding he has of reality. There's something more. Okay, and interesting enough, what are we going to see? That something more, and this is what the Rebbe told us at the very beginning, and we're going to understand it finally, that something more in Adam is going to be expressed in Doimim. It's going to be expressed in the lowest level. Which is going to help us answer the question why we have to dafka mention the Eretz Mitzrayim. Because what's the whole idea of Torah? To take us out of the limitations of the lowest level of reality. So in other words, the highest level is going to have to illuminate the lowest. That's going to answer some of our questions, but that's what the Rebbe's going to explain now. We saw it when the Rebbe talked about it at the very, very beginning of the four levels, and the Rebbe just threw out the line. And the highest level is expressed in the lowest. We didn't understand at all what he was talking about. Now the Rebbe's going to explain that. We'll see that tomorrow. Okay. Bye, guys. I think they're gone.
Bye, guys.
I think they're gone already.